lovely people, my name is Emma and today I'm bringing you my TBR for the first half of June, which is also doubling as my TBR for the readathon FeelGoodAthon. FeelGoodAthon is running for literally the first 2 weeks of June, which is from like the 1st to the 14th, and it is about reading books that make you feel good. It is about trying to embrace some self-care and find a bit of space that feels safe in a time when the world is a little bit crazy right now, and I think everybody can really appreciate that. I'll link the host announcement videos down below and all the different channels and everything. The one that I heard this through in particular was from Jess Nevertheless, but I know that there are 3 other hosts, so everything will be linked down below for that. They're also on Instagram and all that jazz. So there are 10 prompts for books, but then there are also 10 self-care prompts, and I am intending on hitting the various self-care kind of challenges throughout the week, the 2 weeks even as well, but I won't go into them too much here because obviously you're here for books, not for a list of self-care things that I might be doing. I have for the most part in all of these options I have like the book that I'm really keen on and then the book that I might get to if I get time, and I also have like for most of them a fiction and a non-fiction option, so we have a fair number of books to talk about today. The first prompt is a book that you have high hopes for, and for this I'm just picking off of my 5-star predictions lists for both fiction and non-fiction because that seemed to make a lot of sense. A fiction 5-star prediction is The Psychology of Time Travel by Kate Mascarenhas. This is about 4 female scientists who managed to invent time travel, and then about them going forward in time or backward in time, and it's all a little bit chaotic and hectic. I first saw this announced on Harriet Rosie's channel, and she said that it was really good fun and it was lovely to see like female scientists, and I generally really enjoy time travel style books. I think that they are hysterically fun and they play around with some really entertaining tropes and paradoxes, so this is why I think this is a 5-star prediction. I don't actually know an insane amount about the plot, but that's okay because I think it's more fun going into time travel not really knowing what's going to be happening because shenanigans are going to ensue. You just know that for a fact. The non-fiction prediction that I really want to get to is The Professor and the Madman, A Tale of Murder, Insanity and the Making of the Oxford English Dictionary by Simon Winchester. I have heard only good things about this and the subtitle really tells you all. It is about the controversy around the making of the Oxford English Dictionary. I like books. I like true crime that's got a little bit of a funky edge to it. Generally I think this is going to be good fun, and it's quite short, so I'm definitely going to get to it. If I do manage to tick both those off my list, I do have 2 other options. Another one that's a non-fiction 5-star prediction is Down Girl, The Logic of Misogyny by Kate Manne. This is about feminism and specifically about some of the statistics behind misogyny. I don't actually know if I do want to read it at the moment or not because it's obviously it's going to be a bit intense in places, and I don't know if in a feel-good-a-thon I want to be reading about things that are going to make me feel bummed out, but it is a book that I do need to get to at some point soon-ish to be able to tick off the 5-star predictions list so that I can let you know my thoughts on all those predictions and make more of them. One of my fiction 5-star predictions is The City of Dreaming Books by Walter Moers. This is book 3 in the Zamonia World series, and they are getting shorter. I don't know how I feel about that. I don't actually know anything about this particular storyline, but Zamonia is basically absurdist fantasy, and we follow a collection of different characters set in the same world. Think similar to kind of Terry Pratchett, and it has some very funky, entertaining, sort of twisty, insane, zany stuff going on in there. It's definitely going to be a feel-good book, so I'm more inclined to lean towards this one than Down Girl, but I'm not too sure. The next prompt is to read a short book, whatever that means for you, and I'm actually going to use this one to get to a couple of audiobooks. So for me, I consider an audiobook to be quite short when it is under 10 hours. That's really kind of like a demarcation line that I draw in my head between a book that I need to commit more time to or not. So I've got 2 books that are definitely under 10 hours that I'm kind of keen for. So the first one is Summerland by Hannu Rajaniemi, and this is coming in at 9 hours and 49 minutes, and it is an awe-inspiring account of the afterlife and what happens when it spills over into the world of the living. And I know it's where like death stops being a final thing and there is kind of a world of the dead that we as the living have access to, and it's about, I think, basically some kind of almost like colonialist clash between the living and the dead. It looks really entertaining and interesting, and it's got some kind of sort of spy espionage vibe thrown over the top of it, so I think that one's gonna be really good fun. The other one that I'm keen to get to is Therese Raquin by Emile Zola. This is 7 hours and 56 minutes. This is a classic, and it is basically about a a torrid love affair in an unhappy marriage set in 19th century France. So generally sounds really good fun and ticks off some like classics goals I have, as well as some translated fiction goals I have, so it's all generally very good. The next one, next prompt is finish or continue a series, and I just so happened to have bought a bunch of book 2s in a bunch of series just before this was announced, so that's really helpful. So I have 3 on my e-reader that I'm keen to try and get to. I've got book 2 in the Lady Astronaut series by Mary Robinette Kowal, which is called The Fated Sky. This is a look at the space race, but it being a desperate bid that we need to do to get off a doomed planet, and it is looking at some of the female scientists and pilots connected with that, and the first lady astronauts. It looks really good fun. I really enjoyed book 1. Then I have The Masked City, I think that's what it's called. It's book 2 in the Invisible Library series by Genevieve Codigan, something like that. This one is like a funky fantasy where there are parallel universes, and there is an invisible library that basically helps to mediate and control these different universes based on the books that are in them. I know that book 1 was really good fun, but I can't actually remember crazy amount about it, except it had crocodiles. So I'm keen to recap book 1 and then jump into book 2. And then finally I did pick up Behemoth, I believe, which is from Scott Westerfield, and this follows on from Leviathan that I read at the beginning of the year. This is a YA, which is a reimagining of World War I, but with some awesome kind of like steampunk, mutant animal, Darwinist nonsense overlaid over the top. The world building is some of the best world building I've ever read, so really entertaining. So I will get to 1 or all of these, not too sure. The next prompt is a favourite trope, and I have a fiction and a non-fiction for this. So for the fiction, I've picked the trope of the gothic thriller historical fiction style trope, and for that I've got The Familiars by Stacey Hawls. This is a classic kind of gothic novella kind of thing. It's actually set in the 1600s rather than in standard Victorian, which tends to be the kind of vibe for gothic, but I'm assuming it's going to be riffing off of a similar kind of style, and it's basically a woman who is desperate to get pregnant and enlists the help of a young midwife, and then gets drawn into all sorts of crazy witchcraft accusations. It sounds really good fun, and the cover is beautiful. For my non-fiction favourite trope, it's no secret that I love books about medicine and surgery and medical history, etc, etc. So for that one I have Under the Knife, Remarkable Stories from the History of Surgery by Arnold van der Laar. I don't think I need to go into crazy amount about this. It's about specific examples of the history of surgery and like landmark surgeries that have helped to improve our knowledge and move us forward. I think it's gonna be great. The next prompt is a book where you love the cover, and for this one I've decided to pick 2 from a recent haul. I think my most recent haul, which was from the Alma Classics collection, because I do freely admit in that video that I'm just buying those books for their covers. So from that I have Dead Souls by Gogol. This is a Russian classic, and it is set in, I believe, medieval-ish Russia, and essentially it's a mysterious gentleman who comes to a village and convinces the lord to sell him the rights to the dead peasants, and I have no idea what he's going to do with them or why he's collecting their souls, and it sounds really good. I've heard only good things about it. The next one I have is Journey by Moonlight by Antal Szerb. This is a tale. It's a Hungarian fiction, but it's set in Italy, specifically in Venice, which is one of my favourite places in the whole wide world, and it's about a young newly married couple and about the collapse of a bourgeois marriage. So it looks highly entertaining, and I think it's going to be filled with lots of very fun high society hijinks and scandal. The next book is to read a book that is one of the hosts' favourite books, and on their Instagram they do have like a little list from each one of the hosts. I was going through it and a little bit bummed out because I didn't want to read any of them, but luckily Jess has come through for me with Miguel, and one of her favourite books is the Bromance book club by author here, I'm so sorry, can't remember. This looks like it's going to be a really fun light-hearted rom-com-y kind of thing. It's about a gentleman who has trouble with the ladies and joins a book club where it's an all-male book club where they only read romance books as a way of trying to improve their own relationships, which sounds highly entertaining, and Jess says it's pretty good, so I'm kind of down with this. The next one is to buddy read a book, and I did do a shout out about that in my last wrap up, so thank you very much for people who did say that they would be keen to buddy read. So I'm going to be buddy reading My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, and I'm buddy reading this with Paula from Draw Your Book, I believe is the channel channel name. I'll link her channel down below. Do feel free to go check her out. So we're going to be reading this together. This is will be the second Daphne du Maurier that I've read. I have read Rebecca, and I'm really excited to jump in with this one. I posted a picture of this on my Instagram, and a lot of people were saying that this is their favourite Daphne du Maurier ever. So this has meant that my expectations have been risen slightly. The next prompt is reread an old favourite, and for that one I'm actually then going to be combining it with the following prompt, which is read a book a younger you would have loved. So I'm going to reread Howls Moving Castle by Diana Wynne Jones, which I absolutely loved, and I might even watch the Studio Ghibli movie. It's kind of a fantasy romp, it's a YA, it's highly entertaining, but then there is a follow-on book that is set in the same world, which I never got round to as a child but really wanted to read, and that's Castle in the Air. So this is going to be the book that I'm going to read, that I know my younger self would have loved. Within that category as well, I'm also going to be adding in a non-fiction, because there isn't enough non-fiction for me in this stack, and for that one I'm going to be reading A Brief History of Mathematical Thought by Luke Heaton. I know what you're thinking, like, why would my younger self be really into this? But I actually did a short course in the history of mathematics when I was a teenager, so I'm pretty sure younger Emma would have been totally down for this one, and I've been meaning to get back into kind of like history of mathematics and that whole idea, and looking into some of the history of those ideas, and this is the book that I picked for it, so I really want to get around to it on my shelf. Final thing is to read a book from an author that you've never read before, and I'm going to use this as an opportunity to try and chip away at my translated fiction TBR. So the high priority one I have is 6-4 by Hideo Yokoyama. This is a Japanese translated fiction, and it is a crime about a particular precinct where there was this unsolved case where a bunch of young girls were murdered, and then it comes back to haunt the detective later, and it's about him re-entering the case, I believe. I also keen to try and get to China Dream by Majian. This is a post-apocalyptic fiction where it is a dystopian world where the government is planting chips in our heads to be able to control them, and the gentleman who is making them and is finally nearly perfected his art and is about to release them to the general public has a massive crisis of faith and has a bit of a breakdown about it. It's quite short, so I will probably get to this one as well, because, you know, it's not hard to get to short ones. And that, I think, is about it from me. A relatively lengthy TBR, as is always the case here, and I probably will be releasing a TBR for the second half of June at some point towards the end of this readathon, like I've done with May, just so that you can see what I'll be planning on reading afterwards, because this is only for the first 2 weeks of June. I'm still on furlough, so I'm assuming that this is not actually as ambitious as a TBR as it potentially seems from the outside, although I won't get to all of them naturally. There's a fair number of heavy duty books in here in the form of classics. So are you taking part in the Feel Good-a-thon? As always, the link's down below for absolutely everything you might need to know about it. Have a wonderful reading week, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye!